Every year, the animated feature continues its versatility and progress. There's so many different styles, with each major studio doing their own thing, and honestly, the medium has not had a weak year in a long time. 2014 was no exception, and while I overall prefer the selection in 2013, we still encountered a lot of imaginative and well-produced animation. Whether it was a sequel or a spin-off or an original idea, each felt like a true passion project from their director. Now, in previous annual animation retrospectives, I've tended to go in chronological order. However, this time I've decided to do things a little different and look at the films in certain sections where they feel appropriate. But to start, I want to begin with a film that was in a league of its own in 2014, and my personal favorite movie of the year, animated or otherwise. With the Lego Movie, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller had the task of taking the greatest toy of all time and making a coherent motion picture that would hide its commercial prospects. The result was a smart and funny satire on the conformity of society and the importance of imagination. The entire appeal of Lego is that you have the choice to follow the instructions or just build whatever you like, and this film understood that perfectly, with the ending being especially poignant in showing the cross-generational connection this simple little toy can make. However, character was never sacrificed in delivering this message. Emmett was a wonderfully likable and relatable protagonist, representing all of us as we navigate through life and try and find the right avenue to express ourselves. Best of all was the fast pace and breakneck speed of the whole film, with multiple jokes that fill the screen. I love comedies like that, where new viewings bring forth jokes you did not catch before. And I know the more I watch the Lego Movie, I will find a brand new nugget each time. The animators at Animal Logic also deserve a lot of credit for bringing plenty of life to these Lego figures, while realistically portraying how they would move. The whole film feels like watching a $300 million budgeted stop-motion Lego movie, though it remarkably only cost about $60 million to make. It's one of those films that did a superb job of representing my childhood imagination whenever I played with Lego and created stories using them. And any movie that brings me back to that more innocent time of my life deserves extra kudos. As per usual, we have our fair share of sequels, two of which I really loved. Rio II was my favorite animated sequel of the year, wonderfully continuing the story of the first film and nicely developing the characters while adding new ones. The first film was a lovely and energetic ode from Celestine to his home country, and having explored city life in Brazil, it was smart to then take Blue and Jewel to the jungles of the Amazon. The high-flying musical numbers and vibrant colors returned too, with the musical palette being expanded beyond samba. What most impressed me about Rio II was how Celestine was able to develop each and every subplot featured, with none feeling unnecessary or taking away from the story. Blue's storyline could have gone the cliched meet the parents route, but Jewel's father's distrust of him was a natural and understandable gradual slide rather than instantaneous. Not to mention, this actually expanded on Jewel's character and background from the first Rio. Nigel's revenge plot was hilariously portrayed as it takes advantage of his thespian backstory, and an especially brilliant addition was the character of Gabby the Frog, featuring the best vocal performance of the year courtesy of Kristen Chenoweth. Certainly one of the highlights was a scene-stealing operatic number titled Poisonous Love, one of many excellent songs featured on the soundtrack. However, what really elevated the sequel to being as great as the first movie was the logging subplot. This was criticized as being forced and unnecessary, but not really. The Amazon is not some magical fantasy realm like Narnia or something. It's a real place where this sort of activity unfortunately happens every day and is causing animals to go extinct. It would be a major turnoff if this was not included, as it would have indicated the problem does not exist at all. Without that element, this would have been a good film, but not the great one we ended up getting. Another strong sequel was How to Train Your Dragon 2, which made the interesting choice of jumping to the main characters as young adults. This was important in showing Hiccup's growth into a more experienced dragon whisperer, and in showing how the other Vikings of Berk had evolved too. Dean Dubois also opted for a bigger scope as the story became larger and we explore more of this world. While ruined by the trailers, when Hiccup reunites with somebody from his past, it's a poignant moment, and Dubois' script never loses that emotional punch. Yet he never goes heavy-handed and obvious with the heartfelt elements. Dragon 2 also expanded on the continuing relationship between dragons and humans, the conflict of how one side sees them as pets and companions, and the other as weapons. The villain works because he's not that different from real warmongers, so obsessed with power he does not stop to realize peace is a better option. Of course, the flying scenes are magnificent, as elevated by the brilliant animation team at DreamWorks and John Powell's soaring score. I really admired how the film pulled no punches, and I'm definitely curious to see where Dubois takes Hiccup, Toothless, and the other Vikings and dragons for the final chapter in this planned trilogy. That said, there were some less successful sequels this year. Planes, Fire and Rescue was certainly an improvement over the first film, as stakes were raised, and I actually cared a smidgen about Dusty Crawhopper in this one. And while the first Planes was clearly a direct-to-video product slapped onto the big screen at the last minute, this one felt like they had a larger canvas in mind when the artists were putting it together. With that said, the Plane franchise is still worn down by unfunny puns and a cliché story. Including the first Cars, this is the third time in these talking vehicle pictures where the rookie is mentored by the old curmudgeon with a secret. Say what you will about Cars 2, but at least it did not rehash what its predecessor did. Then there are the jokes, and I'm not anti-pun or anything, but some of these are just, Howard the Truck? What? It's clearly aimed at a young audience. I understand its appeal, and it's harmless enough fodder, but the Cars movies are more my cup of tea. However, I will gladly take Planes 2 over Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return. An adaptation of a fan fiction sequel to The Wizard of Oz, this featured quite possibly the most annoying screen characters this year. Each one of these got on my nerves, whether it was a loud owl or a jester who keeps screaming his lungs off. For a film set in the land of Oz, the whole thing lacked a sense of magic or even urgency. It's not helped by the terrible songs by Bryan Adams. Between the characters and the music, it took a lot to not put earmuffs to block the sound. Even the animation was cheap, as it felt like something made direct-to-video. The surprising thing is that very talented people worked on this, including the directors, storyboard artists, and character designers, who have long distinguished careers at Disney and DreamWorks. Otherwise, the whole story felt like a mess, and I do not understand, with the amount of books L. Frank Baum wrote, we don't consider adapting those into animated films. We also had our fair share of beloved characters getting big screen starring roles. I'm not a fan of the Madagascar movies, but I got into the manic energy of Penguins of Madagascar nonetheless. While it was light on story, I saw it as more of an opportunity for the artists at DreamWorks to just have fun in the storyboard department and come up with hilarious gags to put on the screen. The whole production felt very Looney Tunes, of how just threw joke after joke at the audience, and I have to admit, I laughed through the entire thing. There was a lot of wordplay, knocks on action movie cliches, and yes, even puns that worked for me. The main one, using celebrity names, started off in a haha, that's kind of clever sort of way, but only got funnier the more absurd it got. The camera swoops were particularly inventive in Penguins of Madagascar, especially with one long shot where the penguins escape from an airplane and fall down towards the desert below. This is a silly, silly movie, with nothing necessarily groundbreaking, but I cannot fault a movie too much when it makes me laugh as much as this one did. In the same building, director Rob Minkoff brought his long-in-development Mr. Peabody Sherman movie to the screen, and I think he did a very good job of transferring the classic television show creations to the big screen. The humor has that J. Ward wit to it, but the human element was nicely portrayed in the relationship between the two protagonists. The script does a very good job of paralleling the attitude towards Mr. Peabody, being Sherman's adopted parent, to what occasionally happens in real life, which I thought was a good, subtle touch. The many time periods and historical figures also result in many funny gags. Even the use of time travel is well handled, and I liked how it played with the concept of the space-time continuum. Throw in Ty Burrell doing a spot-on Peabody, and this manages to update the material while still respecting the original. However, struggling to update the original series in a coherent manner is Postman Pat, the movie. When the movie starts with the camera pulling into Greendale and the familiar theme song plays, there is a nostalgic feeling when watching, especially for longtime fans of the television show like myself. When Pat is doing his rounds, it does feel like a new episode of the series, and even the story of a talent show works thanks to some funny bits. However, after a while, I did feel the plot started losing its way. What starts as a cute little story involving our favorite letter carrier, then detours into a movie with robot cats shooting laser beams out of their eyes and Terminator references. The charm that was there in the beginning seems to lessen as the film goes on. What's wrong with a movie of Pat delivering his parcels and going on a fun adventure? Why the need to throw in killer robots? It's not a soul-crushing take on Postman Pat, but I felt the filmmakers kinda got a little too off course. Maybe they should have taken some notes from Paddington on how to properly adapt a beloved British icon to the big screen. 2014 also saw our fair share of movies with simple stories that managed to work thanks to the artistic innovations on the screen. While it is a Disney animated production, Big Hero 6 is actually closer to the films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in character and story structure, with a hint of DC's Teen Titans. The parts that work the best are actually not the action scenes, but rather the heartfelt connection between Hero and Baymax. Being one of the few things to remember his brother by, their bond is really sweet and well developed, and Baymax becomes more than just comic relief. The movie also has fun with the superhero movie tropes, even as it uses those same ones. The inventive animation also deserves commending, as the animators give these characters a lot of personality and likability, probably more than the script does. While the likes of Fred and Go-Go get moments to shine, it does feel like the rest of the team is pushed to the side. The villain, like a lot of Marvel baddies, is also disappointingly weak, especially as it digs deeper into his background and motivations. Without spoiling anything, this is the third straight time Disney has pulled the third act villain twist, and it's getting a little tiring at this point. Please don't do it in Zootopia. Regardless of that, Big Hero 6 is a fun and colorful superhero adventure, and it's that rare Disney animated movie where a sequel would be good to see, if only to give the rest of the team the chance to share the spotlight with Baymax. While it's my least favorite of Laika's work so far, I nonetheless found the Boxtrolls to be a cute and very Dickensian-like tale. The craftsmanship we associate with that Oregon stop-motion studio is all over this production, with some spectacular production design and unique character designs. While the Boxtrolls are adorable, it's actually the villains who prove the most interesting, especially the main one, who is completely delusional about his love for cheese, which leads to some very Monty Python-esque bits of humor. The main protagonist is a tad weak, though, falling into the familiar Tarzan wild boy, and a part of me wishes the movie had followed his companion Winnie more. While it lacks the poignancy of Coraline and Paranorman, both of which I loved, I still admire the sensibility of the project and like his willingness to step outside the norm. Similarly, The Book of Life is another film that works more for its visual imagination than the fairly basic story. This is clearly a personal project for Jorge Gutierrez, as he peppers the movie with his recognizable style, and the entire look is very reminiscent of art of books. He really manages to bring us into the Mexican culture of the Day of the Dead, and the decision to make the characters wooden puppets is especially inventive. The Book of Life gets especially imaginative when he arrives at the Land of the Remembered, but we sadly do not spend enough time there, and so I actually wish the film was a tad longer. The love triangle is hardly anything new, but the characters are likable enough, and the film is so visually arresting I cannot help but be enchanted by this world Gutierrez and his team created. Of course, it was not just the big studios providing some strong work, as independent and international houses created some unique animated films for the marketplace. The Wind Rises and Ernest and Celestine were both nominated for last year's Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, but they did not get major releases until 2014, so allow me to play catch-up. The Wind Rises is reportedly Hayao Miyazaki's final film, and if it is, what a way to cap off his incredible career. Beautifully drawn and animated, this is a delicate and touching film looking at a man whose dream was to build airplanes, but found himself with the conflict of designing these flying machines for the war effort. The pacing is more leisurely than we might expect, but it all fits into Jiro's journey, and his story is so fascinating the 2 hours managed to fly by. In between all this is a touching love story, which leads to many tough decisions for him. The casting for the English dub is excellently chosen, with the translation not diluting Miyazaki's script and the film's themes. If this is the film he decides to finish his feature filmography on, he at least went out on a strong note. Meanwhile, Ernest and Celestine is simply charming. Featuring a very storybook approach in his animation, the story works as a great commentary on the class system, with the mice underground and the bears up above. The relationship between the title characters is very sweet, but the script also plays with the humor of the situation. There's a timeless feel to the entire production, and not simply because it's hand-drawn. There's a nice quaintness and beauty to the movie, and it's a shame Kids did not feel confident enough to give it a wider release, because more people should seek it out and give it a watch. Meanwhile, the Canadian-Korean co-production, The Nut Job, provided a fun way to begin the year back in January. The filmmakers give the whole movie a very Looney Tunes vibe with its zippy animation and funny gags. Surly Squirrel, the movie's equivalent to Daffy Duck, has a very likable jerk vibe about him, as the movie makes no secret of his, well, surly personality, and yet I actually rooted for him in his quest to steal those nuts. Roll in the heist plot, and you have an engaging and hilarious caper. Is it a Saturday morning cartoon? Sure. Is the story fairly basic? Yes, but I appreciate the slapstick and hijinks ensuing on screen, and the way the plot builds towards a humorous chase. The script does not even force a romance onto its two male and female leads, even though I'm sure everyone expected it. Although I could have done without the modern dancing in the movie set in the 1950s. I feel this got an unfair rap when it was released, and on the second viewing, I actually found my opinion going up on The Nut Job. I plan on doing a defense on this film, so expect me to go even more in depth about why this worked. A film that slid under the radar was Jack and the Cuckoo Clock Heart. From the opening, there's a definite Tim Burton influence to the whole thing, so it's certainly visually striking, and to its credit, it's a fairly unique story. The musical numbers provide the best moments, as the director is allowed to experiment and run freely. However, it is downgraded by the animation. There's just something very stilted about the CG on this movie, especially on the characters. Though I somewhat give it a pass, as it clearly had a low budget and then going for a stop-motion feel. The characters are basically cardboard cutouts too, with the English dub not doing them any favors. However, the inventiveness of the movie almost makes up for that. Almost. Finally, I want to end the video by talking about Bill Plympton's latest work, Cheatin'. If you're familiar with his animation, it should not be surprising that this is an out-there, unique, and funny movie. As is typical of Plympton, the whole movie was animated by himself, and he injects it with plenty of his trademark bizarre humor. The story of a hilarious misunderstanding with a couple trying to punish the other goes in a lot of unexpected and funny directions. Even though there is no dialogue, the whole tale is easy to follow, and the animation has some brilliant visual imagery. Cheatin' has been traveling through the festival circuit around the world and was recently nominated for a number of Annie Awards, so it should hopefully be easier to find soon. It makes a very good companion piece to his similarly wacky I Married a Strange Person. So as you can see, it's been a solid year of animated movies, filled with a variety of worthy choices from many animation houses. So what can we expect in 2015? Well, how does an alien invasion, human emotions, a long-delayed dinosaur, talking Twinkies, a vampire family, a little prince, and our favorite comic strip beagle sound? I'm certainly looking forward to all of those. See you next time.